Hello and welcome back. I'm in the woodshed and I'm staring at my hedge just behind me, running down the back end of my property. There is a reason for me to actually show you that, and I will have a very quick look at that before we move into the field just opposite or right behind my property. It will all become apparent and it will all tie in to the title of this video. And slow living and can you be happy? So let's dive straight into this topic. I've become quite interested in this topic of recent because well, basically people have pointed at me saying I live a very slow life compared to how they do, and yeah, things aren't always as they seem, and I guess a lot of you probably already know that with how you live your lives. Now, my property, for transparency, is an ex-local authority property. I bought it and I hold the title to the deeds. So, in effect, yeah, this is a private property. I do have on the deeds marked out my boundaries. And this is one of them. And it is a back hedge that runs all the way down to it joins the other boundary, which is also on my deeds I own. So I'll just quickly show you. So that marker there is basically where my hedge starts, my responsibility I own or have purchased, all the way down through here, down here past the chickens, right the way down through here. I come down to this little bit, very rarely gets visited this part, and as you can see it goes off into there. My back hedge is flanked by open pasture land and obviously somebody else's property. It is blowing a gale, it's miserable, and I've got to negotiate this flooded lane, but I'm going to go into a little field which joins to the back of my property where my wooden fence went into the back hedge, and I just showed you that. This ground is owned by the Duchy and that has connections with royalty. It was King Charles's kind of institution, I believe, but now I think it's been handed to William, who or Prince William, who's taken it on now, or is the head figure of the Duchy estate. They do derive an income from it as well. But yeah, all this land, this side of my hedge, belongs to Duchy estates. In effect, I have royalty as neighbours. So the very corner of this field is where my property joins this hedgerow. Right, my hedgerow joins just over there and it joins this hedge. And what we're going to do is follow this hedge to the corner and find the boundary stone or boundary marker. It's an ancient way to mark out areas of land which councils derive from now. Right, just in here, if I push through, you'll see that little stone there. And that is a marker. That's a boundary marker for a council or a parish, to be precise, a parish marker. And on that side, on the opposite side to stone, or that hedgerow that joins mine, is the Lincolnhorn parish, and on this side is the Stoke Climson parish. That's quite important. Right, I've come back into the woodshed to at least eliminate some of the wind noise. I do have a Christmas jumper on actually underneath this hoodie because it is blowing a gale, so I've put a hoodie on as well. Right then, getting back to topic. That stone is very important because it marks the parish boundaries and it's the lowest form of governance that we have here in the UK, the parish councillors. And I was one for about 12 months. I didn't last very long because, well, to cut a long story short, it didn't meet my expectations and my naivety on me being able to have a significant impact on getting things done and what needed to be done as I saw it in importance, like a bus shelter for the kids and speed restrictions for the village. I found myself a little bit handicapped on that. And ultimately it's a democracy, so you're working with other people and things are voted on and things have to happen probably how, you know, a lot of people would assume they would, but my naivety, I thought I was there to instigate these things on a here and now basis. So I didn't last very long, and on top of that I had to go back into the army to gain some, you know, meaningful income at that particular point in time. So this hedge here, like I said, parish boundary. 99.99% of my property sits in the Stoke Climson parish, but I have that back hedge which sits in the Lincolnhorn parish. That enabled me to become a councillor in the Lincolnhorn Parish Council, or sit on it. You have to own property, work or live in an area. There are a raft of conditions you have to meet to become a councillor. Not only that, because I owned some few metres of hedgerow in Lincolnhorn, it meant I was able to get married in Lincolnhorn Church. And that's where we're going now, because this story isn't quite finished yet. This hedge on the left follows a Iron Age hill fort rampart just on the left hand side above us. And on the right hand side, as we drop down the hill, the local graveyard is in there. And these hedgerows are kind of 20 feet high. It's quite a sunken little lane. I'm going to turn right into the village. There's the church. So this is the church I got married, and I actually entered those doors to become a married man. So let's pop in and I'll show you why we're here. Parish council punishment back in the day when, yeah, that was still able to be enforced. Alright, let's go in. Heavy door. Yeah, this was a really beautiful church to get married in. Right, after looking around in there, we'll just pop out here. There's a gravestone that has a name on it, which is quite important to this conversation we're going to have. Right, this gravestone was actually cut by Daniel Gum. So he crafted it. You got the Grim Reaper there, a skull, and another skeleton there. You're probably wondering what the significance is. Right then, so Daniel Gum was basically a born and bred person within the Lincolnhorn parish. He actually went and lived in a cave up on the top of the high ground on the moors, and he actually raised a family. He did lose a wife up there as well, and he was he wasn't a simpleton. He was an extremely gifted mathematician, and he could do advanced and complex equations, which he actually did carve out on the rocks themselves. They can still be seen to this day if you go and visit his cave, although technically it's not his cave. When they expanded the Cheese Ring quarry, they actually removed some of the workings around his cave, which held all these mathematical equations, and they relocated him safely outside of the boundary of the area they were working. So it's not really his cave in that respect, but they've preserved something of it, so you can still to this day go and see, and you can actually faintly see all these complex equations. I will do actually a video on him in the summer when I can get up on the moors and not be, you know, plagued with all this wind. But the reason he lived in the cave, and he stated, was he refused and would not pay any tax or form of rent or any outgoings. He wanted to be free of the system of taxation in any way, shape or form. So his wives, when one passed away, then he got remarried, they all lived in this cave, and kids. I'm not sure how comfortable or how enthusiastic everybody else involved in this life would have been with that setup, but in any case, it is a true story. A local guy from this parish ended up on the high ground, living in a cave system, raising a family to avoid paying taxes or being part of the taxation system. Right, I've got a cup of coffee and I've come in. It is actually quite bitterly cold. Now, in today's world, particularly with social media and YouTube and what we can see, a raft of information regarding slow living, be happy, be free, break out of society, the alternative lifestyle. I've even heard it quoted as getting out of the matrix. I hate that term, but nevertheless it is used. But ultimately, Daniel Gum goes to show you it's nothing new. People thought about this and people have tried to emulate and get away from the system even way back in history. Everything that you may be watching and thinking, there is nothing new about it. So for me personally, back when the New Age hippie scene sort of like, or New Age travellers, I'll get that terminology right, New Age traveller scene was really in full swing, I kind of joined it in a semi kind of way. I had a van, a red Escort van with a mattress thrown in the back. I'd go around Cornwall staying overnight. You know, we went to Glastonbury in it. I mean, we did that kind of like half nomadic lifestyle. We still had a house or a flat at the time I was living in, but we experienced it to a point. Being a surfer, a lifelong surfer, you know, particularly in the Bude area, I got to see a lot of blow-ins, and by that I mean people that basically almost nomadic come into the Bude area from all over the world, in fact. And I've had many a conversation after a surf, over a coffee, just chatting to random people that I will never see again, just about their lifestyle, what they're doing. They want to know what I'm doing and everything like that. But these people were on the road, and it was always fascinating for me to hear their stories. I've also know people that do the off-grid thing. I know people that do the homesteading thing, people that do the small holding type thing, and there's varying subtle differences how you can describe those things as well. Van life, I know people that do van life. And to be honest with you, I'm in regular contact with people doing van life. I know a lot of people, and I know a lot of people doing alternative lifestyles. And yeah, even though I may not fully be immersed in it myself, I could be classified as having a slightly alternative lifestyle. Yeah, again, I've had a pretty diverse lifestyle, from surf bum, factory worker, family man, intermingled with that, and then a stint in the army, back now to being a crafter, hobo, camper. You know, I've lived a pretty varied life, and I've known a lot of people. One of the biggest myths you'll come across is people will say to you is, oh, all those people with money, you know, they may be rich, but they're not happy. I'll tell you something, I've known a lot of rich people, and I can guarantee you a vast majority are extremely happy. Change of location, back in the workshop. But on back of what I've just said there, I've also met many people who are really poor, desperately poor, and they are also happy. But the thing is, if you're really poor or short on resources and money, it does mean that things become a lot more complicated, fragile, and easily to break down and go wrong. And I don't mean that in a mechanical sense. I mean that if you're living paycheck to paycheck, which most of us do, and that includes myself, it's very easy for that to go wrong. One paycheck missed, or two, suddenly you're having to find money out of fresh air, or you're going into debt, or you're basically going without. I'm quite lucky, as I've explained. I own this place. Not been given to me. I've not had any privilege. This is all on the back of working in a factory, you know, many hours a week to be able to get to this point. But I'm still at that point. I live paycheck to paycheck. So basically, if I sell 3 sticks, you know, that money goes in the bank. It goes for bread, milk, perhaps shoes, and perhaps, you know, 20 odd quid gas in the car to get us around. So yeah, if you're poor, you can still be happy, but things are very fragile. Whereas if you've got unlimited funds, or funds aren't a problem, your happiness becomes a little bit more easier to acquire. Now, slow living can come at a huge personal cost, and I have a story indicating that, but ultimately it's a sacrifice that, if you undertake it, you have to be aware that once you've chosen that road, you might not be able to easily backpedal and take on where you left off. You have to be aware of that, because obviously slow living, particularly in this day and age, compared to Daniel Gum, who would have had very little material items, slow living, even by today's standards, you know, there is still material items involved. You're not simply just stood there in the clothes that you've got on your back. In most cases, there still will be somewhere to live and vehicles and basically a lifestyle. And that's what it really translates down to. Slow living really in this day and age is lifestyle and lifestyle choices. So let me tell you a very quick story. When I was a young man and I was really heavily into my surfing, on one occasion I actually finished surfing, got out, and I was on the car park overlooking Widmouth Bay, drinking a cup of coffee and just thinking the world was fantastic. A truck pulled up and a young lad got out, and I recognised him. He looked very different, but I recognised him as somebody that I've surfed with over many years. We weren't friends, we were just faces in the crowd that would nod to each other and exchange the odd conversation. But anyway, he did the same as what I was doing, just overlooking the surf, and he started to walk back to his truck to get into it. He kind of thought twice about coming over to speak to me, but he did. And once he started talking about where he'd been for the last 2, 3, 4 years, and he'd been on the road living a fantastic nomadic lifestyle. And the more he talked, the more jealous I got, and the more I got into his story. And I was working in a factory and I was doing 16-hour shifts. I was busting my balls to pay the mortgage and raise a young family. But he had travelled the world, Canada, Fiji, Hawaii. He'd been everywhere, Bali, everywhere I wanted to go in my head as a surfer and explore. But I was shackled to normal life and paying the bills. Now, obviously, the conversation then started filtering back to me, and he kind of said to me, "Oh, what have you been up to?" And this young lad was a fantastic orator, and he commanded a presence when he talked, and I felt really humbled and I felt really embarrassed to say I've been working, my butt off in, the factory for years and years to pay a mortgage. And I'd just bought a new house. I'd had a new child, so I'd gone from a 2-bedroom house to a 3-bedroom, and I'd increased my mortgage, blah de blah de blah. I thought this was all normal conversation. I could see his face dropping, and he was getting angrier and angrier and angrier. And in the end, he just let rip at me, saying, "You're the problem. You're the reason I can't afford a house, because you will pay what they demand for houses." And I was stuttering and going, what? Well, I've got a new child. I've got to have a new house. I've got an addition to the family. I haven't been given no money. I'm working for the family and the income. And I found myself making excuses after excuses while a barrage of accusations came my way that I was responsible for the reason he was struggling to find rent or, get some money together to acquire a house. And it was all pointed down to me. Yeah, here I was, so jealous that he'd had this free lifestyle. He was nomadic, carefree. Any money he'd had, he just whipped on the card, lived a free existence, bummed off people, made his way around the world. And here I was at this point in time, now being accused of the woes of 4 years later or so, where he was now struggling because he'd obviously met a girl, whether it was his child or somebody else's child, I don't know. But he was struggling to put family life together for him and his new family. But that was all falling on my shoulders. And I found that extremely hard to swallow because, quite simply, like I said, I was jealous of his free, easygoing, slow lifestyle, doing everything that I dreamed of and thought was right, only to find myself being accused when he tried to come back into normal society, even on a lower level, that I was the reason he was being held back. Well, quite simply, you cannot cut your cloth two ways. Very few people can. You have to make choices, and if you make choices, they do have consequences. So then, does simple living equate to freedom, happiness, and everything being okay in the world? Well, It really doesn't. It's all it translates to is your state of mind at any given time or during that period that you're actually trying to have a simple existence or life. Whether that be cutting back on the hours in a factory you work, whether it's like not having to work the weekends, whether it's a partner going out helping ease the load so you can both spend more quality time together. Whatever it is that's beginning to alter your lifestyle and make it more simple, less stressful, and less of a burden on one person or the family as a whole, is a good thing. But that will benefit your state of mind and make you happier. I do know people that work every hour under the sun. They've got every imaginable expensive toy that you can think of, and they still are extremely happy, even though they're obviously paying an absolute fortune for this lifestyle. They are blissfully happy. Yet again, that points to a state of mind, and where everything is happening in your mind is making you not question and think that there is an alternative way that you should be doing something. They've found a happiness in that existence. Whereas somebody who wants less responsibility, less financial commitment, would be absolutely horrified in that situation and couldn't even imagine going on, in that, or imagine carrying on in that particular lifestyle. It all comes down to your state of mind. If you've got no money and you're basically trying to live out of a van, and no matter how romantic it looks on YouTube, if your state of mind isn't prepared for it, or it really wants it, or that was what you were seeking, wholeheartedly from your core, it will very quickly grate you and become a burden on your your mental health and possibly your physical health as well. Slow living has to equate not only the slow living part, it has to equate also your happiness and well-being, and it's got to come at a price that you're willing to pay and can financially afford. So for me personally, I've explained multiple times that I own my property. I don't have any financial commitments on that front, except the day-to-day expenditure of keeping the house going and maintenance. And whatever lifestyle you have, there will be maintenance at some point or for something. So, that's normal. We keep it at a low cost. I do most of it myself, and what I can't do, we kind of source the cheapest option for it. Myself, I don't actually have a vast array of hobbies that cost me a lot of money. I'm very cheap. My wife and my kids, we are fully immersed in this slow living kind of lifestyle. We don't spend a lot. Everything is on a very tight budget, and it's through necessity as much as what we're trying to preach and practice. It is necessity to get through from one day to the next day. We run one car, and that can be a lot of hassle that a lot of people would not want to entertain, but we make it work, and we car juggle. Everything has to work around us sharing. So we've only got one vehicle, and we've gone from having a 1.7 litre car down to a 1.2. So we're continually downscaling and simplifying our life. I make money from crafting and sticks. It's long hours, and in some cases messy and repetitive, for what, if I was to work it out, less than minimum wage. But because of my simpler existence and financial commitments, I can just about put food on the table. And obviously I've got a few other income sources as well, very small ones, but if you tot it all up at the end of the year, it allows us to have a very simplified and small existence. I feel blessed. I feel, reasonably happy, even though this present year that we've just had, on a personal level, for myself, my wife, and our immediate family, we've had a lot of tragedies to deal with. But from that core, mantra of a simple life, I'm as close to being and living it as I can, while still existing in a, let's use the word, normal house setup. It's just that we use less, we recycle, upcycle, and basically just make our existence as low impact on the environment and to us financially. So it kind of works. So as for, seeking out that simpler lifestyle which will give you happiness, does it exist? Has it got to be that way? Well, I'm guessing probably not. You don't have to go to the extremes of Daniel Gum and live in a cave to avoid any financial, implications or costs, to kind of gain some sort of happiness or belief that you're happy. A simple lifestyle could be, like I said earlier, as simple as just, being able to knock a couple overtime shifts on the head, or just spending more time together. Whatever you're doing, whether you're doing van life, you're out there on a homestead, or a small holding, and you're just trying to cut things back to the core, your core financial costs, and, well, basic personal values, so you get to feel you're living a simpler life. That's all you have to do. You don't have to be switching on social media and falling into the trap that you have to follow that road that's being prescribed to you. A simple life will come from whatever you're doing and however you find it. And as long as you feel that is where you're going and you're achieving that simpler lifestyle that fits how you're living, you've struck gold. You're achieving it. Like I said, I'm far removed from what you would see a lot of people saying how they live a simpler lifestyle which equals happiness. I'm living my life how I do, and I'm feeling extremely blessed, and I feel like I've simplified it. It was not that many years ago that I was, literally doing every hour God sends, and I didn't seem to be any better off for it. But here I am, and things feel a lot better now. So, you don't have to be a Daniel Gum and go and live in a cave to have a simpler lifestyle and enjoy it. So all I'm going to say here is, I hope this me rambling on, meant something to somebody. If it didn't, it's just me having a little bit of a rant. Take care, stay safe, and hope to catch you guys out on the trail.